I am the president of Beaches Watch, and I want to thank you all for coming tonight. For those of you who may not know what Beaches Watch is, we are a citizens group, and we are celebrating our 10th year this year. And on the agenda, if you've got one, we have a save the date on there. We are doing a special 10-year anniversary celebration to celebrate 10 years of contributions to the community and 10 years of Beaches Watch. So I want you to save the date. I hope you guys will plan to come and join us. Before we get started, let me recognize some of the elected officials we have here today. From Atlantic Beach, we have Mayor Carolyn Woods. We also have Commissioner Maria Mark. Then from Jacks Beach, we have Mayor Charlie Latham. And Councilman Keith Doherty, where is he? Oh, there he is. And Councilman Tom Taylor. And then from Neptune Beach, we have Richard Arthur. Mayor Harriet Pruitt said to send her apologies, but she's at a Dancing in the Streets meeting, which was more important, apparently. So, and of course it is. And let's see, do we have any other electeds that... Okay. Well, and we have George Forbes, who's our city manager. I want to thank you for being here as well. Like I said, I hope you got...
Our interim city manager, Nelson Van Leer.
Oh, okay. Interim city manager Nelson Van Leer from Atlantic Beach. Oh, okay, good. Glad you made it.
There he is.
All right.
I'm glad I made it too.
I'm impressed, actually.
It was very quick between here and downtown.
Well, real quickly, let me make a few announcements and we'll get the meeting going. Speaking of Dancing in the Streets, it's going to be May 17th, and Beaches Watch is going to have a table. We do need a few volunteers to staff our table, so we have a sign-up sheet over here where Elaine is sitting. So if you'd like to help us out with a 2-hour shift, we would really appreciate it. Also, for those of you who were not able to go to the meeting, Jacksonville Beach had a meeting a week ago this past Monday with Jim Peters, who's with Responsible Hospitality Institute, did a presentation about hospitable cities. And anyway, the city of Jacks Beach is going through a process to try to identify some things to do to make downtown Jacks Beach more hospitable. And part of that process is they're doing some tours right now. They want people to go sign up for these tours Friday night at 11 p.m., Saturdays at noon or 2:30 or 11 p.m. Basically to see downtown Jacks Beach because it has different faces depending on what time of the day it is. And they would like for people to participate in 2 tours if possible. And they are guided tours. You can walk around and see what's going on in downtown Jacks Beach. And then there's a survey. And the survey is online, and the information is on the agenda here. You take the survey and answer the questions based on what you learned from the tours. So we encourage people to do that because we want to support this process and make sure that what happens with downtown Jacks Beach is what the community wants to see happen with downtown Jacks Beach. Also wanted to make note that the Atlantic Beach Human Rights Ordinance Workshop is going to be Tuesday, May 13th. Is that correct? At 6 p.m. in the commission. Okay. And then I mentioned the save the date for the 10-year anniversary committee, or anniversary celebration. And we are looking for sponsors for wine and beer, printing, and publicity. So if you know anybody that might be interested in helping sponsor this great event, it's going to be a lot of fun, then there's an email address, contact@beacheswatch.com. And then our meeting for June is going to be a legislative session wrap-up. The speaker we're in the process of finalizing the speaker for that, but that should be a really good meeting because we want to know what's happened in the 2014 legislative session and how it will impact our beaches communities. So that should be a really good one. So tonight, though, we have the task force, the Consolidation Task Force, and this is really the task force. And so I'd like to introduce the panelists that we have tonight, we have Elaine Brown. And now all of these people live at the beach, so this is pretty impressive. Elaine was chair of, and I'm going to have to read this, Organization, Operations, Personnel, Budget, Borrowing, Risk, and Economy Committee. Okay, and she's only got 10 minutes to talk about that. And so that's going to be hard, right?
No.
And then Rena Coughlin, she's an Atlantic Beach resident, and she's chair, another chair, awesome, of Neighborhoods, Infrastructure, Planning, Services, and St. Johns River Committee.
Just a nice little package.
Yeah, yeah. And then Georgette Dumont lives in Jacksonville. So we have all three of the beaches represented.
And they're all women.
And they're all women. And Georgette is a member of the Governance and Mission Committee.
Shortest name. Very nice.
Yeah. And then, of course, we have Jacksonville City Council President Bill Gulliford.
And the token.
Yeah, so, anyway, what we're going to do tonight, each of these panelists are going to tell us about their committee and the findings that their committee generated and recommendations, kind of give us an understanding of what's coming out of their committee. And then Bill Gulliford's going to talk about what's next. What do we do with all of that? And then we will open the floor.
You can have 5 of my minutes.
Okay. And then we'll open the floor for questions. So we're going to start tonight with Elaine.
Council President Gulliford, when he started this, I believe it was last August.
Actually, it was July, believe it or not.
July.
When I first met with McClory Boyd.
This is the longest task force I've ever been on. And we met every week. And our subcommittees met weekly. And Lori Boyer, who the council president had asked to chair this, is doing such an exceptional job. She's an exceptional leader, and I must say that she has led this group so brilliantly through, and you can tell from everything that we've studied, just, how in-depth every single thing was. And man, she studies every single one of our committees and what we do, and she's so well prepared for each meeting. It's been amazing. I want to start by saying that we had, during this period of time from last July, many department heads and independent authorities and the 3 municipalities involvement all come before the full task force. And they presented, and we asked them questions, and we derived some of our workshop for each of our committees from that. And I want to make you really, really proud because, and I know my colleagues think the same thing because it was so impressive, but when the 3 beaches managers came, and I'm not doing this because George is here, they were so good. They were outstanding. And the very interesting thing is, because a lot of you are in the know, and the reporters are not writing this, I'm sure, but, they were happy. They were happy. Consolidated government is it working? That was the question. And quite frankly, the beaches, without opening the interlocal agreement quite yet, then, this was to really say that there were some suggestions that they gave. In fact, one of them, which we will be discussing in the future, is that as a new administration comes in, they really don't know anything about the interlocal agreement. They know nothing about what we have been through, lawsuits, struggles, etc., to get where we are, and pending, perhaps, problems and litigation. So, that is part of the study that we also, and some recommendations that we also have, that as you get into this process of a new mayor and a new administration coming in, that ought to be part of the education. And but I was so proud of all of them, and I'm gonna hit some highlights for you because it's very in-depth. It's really interesting stuff like risk management. I mean, you just don't get too excited about that kind of thing. But I will tell you, I'm going to just go through and say some things that I, quite frankly, feel jump out at me as very logical. And like this was approved. The ordinance code should be changed to require that the semi-annual actuarial report provided to risk management, which tells you how at risk your city and all of its properties and everything are, going to be given to the city council as soon as the report is received by the risk manager. Well, yeah, that makes sense. And it was approved. And that the ordinance code should be changed to require the provision of the list of insured properties maintained. And I have a little antidote to tell you on that one, which we were all very shocked at. I don't know if you read, like, over, and I don't know if I should be saying this in front of the president, but I'm gonna, over a year ago, but over a year ago, it was said that the real estate department and the city were forming a little committee, and they were going to take 9 months to give us all of the properties and their appraised value. Well, guess who had the list the whole time? Risk management. They know exactly what the properties are. They have to insure them. And so we are saying, and this was kind of a no-brainer too, but this should be provided to the city council. We should know what their values are, where they are, and their conditions. So that was another one, but that's in West Monroe. But I'm just going to skim through some of these. I think, Sandy, that's what you kind of asked me to do. And this was under contract management, that the city council should establish, and these are the things that council president and the council are going to take back, and they're going to drill down on after we get through. The city council should establish in the ordinance code a requirement that each contract that the city enters into shall specify which agency, commission, or other governmental entity of the city will manage each contract which the city enters into. And that hasn't always been a part of the past. And for a council rules change, the city council should establish in the council rules, consistent with the ordinance code, requirement that each contract the city enters into and any legislation approving a contract that the city shall enter into shall specify which department, agency, commission, or other governmental aspect of the city will manage each contract that the city. So you've got absolutely that we're going to have an ordinance code stating it, and then we're asking the council, and these are two different things, and we also have charter amendments that we're asking for. But that they know, and I'll give an example just so you get it, is that, for example, the shipyards, when it was under construction many, many years ago, there were draws being made as the construction, the bulkhead, etc. was going on. Many of them were made, and the work was questioned later. That's all I'm going to say about that. But what it goes back to is who's watching the work, who's making it, who is responsible. And you can't just simply say economic development. You know, you got to specify. And so the list with every contract that the city council approves is going to also say, all right, you approved this project, and now here is the person or the department that's going to be watching out for it. That's going to finally be able to say that yes, it's on target, it's on budget, it's being done properly. That was another we thought was, you know, pretty good. I'll tell you, central services is something we had so many different meetings about. And central services are part of consolidated government. When you have consolidated government, it makes sense for, if you're consolidated, buy in bulk. If you're consolidated, do as many things as you can to serve as many, rather than everybody going out and getting their own contracts. Makes sense. Well, there were some problems in that, you know, when you would drill down and you would say, well, if a police car comes in and that police car is having the tires rotated and one changed, and the bill is, you know, $150 as opposed to going to a Jiffy Lube or something like that. What should we be doing? Well, when you drill down, you find out that in the private sector, if I own a Jiffy Lube, that Jiffy Lube has all of my, the cost of my building built into it or the rent on it, you know, all of my taxes, all of my employees' costs, etc. Same thing. Same thing. So what we're saying, the city council should pass an ordinance removing from the ordinance code, the portions of chapter 108, requiring the practice of internal budgeting and charging of central services to all city departments. They would spread it out to everybody. And departments that weren't even using them or had used their budget and put their budget together, putting that kind of a number in there. So we feel as though that's going to be something I know the council will drill down on and should be something that could very well, I think, be very beneficial to everybody. We looked at the budget, and we approved that the city council should pass an ordinance amending the charter of the city, to require the same number of votes, 13, to override the budgetary line item veto of the mayor. And that will be an interesting one for you guys too. Yeah, that was actually very interesting. It was sent back to committee. But we also said that the city council, this pass, should pass an ordinance requiring the mayor to certify in the quarterly financial statements that the employee caps are accurate and comply with the departments of the city. And this is really putting another layer on the mayor and the budgetary department so that it isn't just a great big surprise. It really is something that we're looking at and we're qualifying and quantifying as we go through the year. Since we're in the library, I thought I would say this one, and I know Sandy, you're probably looking at me like I'm going to get off here, but the city council should pass an ordinance providing that revenue generated by the Jacksonville Public Library from the collection of fines should be retained by the library. And in the past, what we found is it was put right into the general fund. So the libraries would get the fines and fees, but only the fines, not the fees, but that they would come back to the library and maintain an account in the library. Now, the fear with that, and we did talk about it, is will the city council say, oh, okay, here's the budget we're going to give you and what you're asking for, but oh, we notice you now have this little account over here, kind of like the lottery did with the schools, remember, and we kind of said, well, we're hoping that that won't happen, and we feel as though there's probably going to be some tweaking of that when they come in the future, too. The biggest thing that we really recommended, and it's going to take an awful lot of work, it's not something that we approve, but this is so huge, it's that we are asking that the city council should put together a task force for the purpose of developing a more comprehensive plan for public health initiatives. And the task force should begin by reviewing the legal and moral requirements of the city to provide public health services to its citizens, including but not limited to environmental health, communicable diseases, control services, primary indigent health care, and mental health. And really stay on top. We haven't been keeping up with the amount of dollars that we should be giving into the health department, nor has the executive of our health department been sitting at the table when these budget items were discussed or were not discussed. And we're also looking at employee health, which is going to be huge, in that we are asking that they look into an employee health program, and the way that it would be set up would be kind of like this. Say, for example, Baptist was chosen. Baptist, instead of everybody that works for the city going to their own doctors, they would be set up to go to these document boxes that Baptist has, but they would be dedicated only to city employees. So that if say, University of Kansas gets it, these buildings with doctors in it, dedicated only to employees of the city, and we're hoping that the school board will be a part of that and some independent authorities as well. But what we're looking at is a reduction in healthcare costs, because ours are very high in the city, and better care, because that employee can go in at will and the family can go in at will. It won't be like when you call your doctor and you have to wait for a week or whatever, that they would be there. They would have an opportunity, if they didn't want to go to these doctors, to go to another one. But the big deal is that these would be free. This would be a part of your health benefits. And it's been structured successfully in other states, and there are other states looking at it, and other cities and municipalities looking at it too. But to make sure that we as a county are on top of our health for and then to look at our employees of the city and making sure that we keep the costs down, but the provision of really good health care is another one that we're looking at too. So I think we're going to do at the end questions, you know. But I know that's my 10 minutes.
No, you're 10
and I'll answer questions at the end.
Jackie, yeah. Me or?
I don't know. How do you want to do it?
So, I think listening to Elaine's laundry list of recommendations that come out of her committee, shift your brain to a wholly different perspective. Our committee spent most of its time listening to citizens and talking about and learning about neighborhoods. As those of you who are involved in local government know, there are fierce opinions and ideas about how best to represent citizens, neighborhoods, and so I think our committee spent the majority of its time on citizen engagement, neighborhood empowerment, and then figuring out the nexus between neighborhoods and government. When Elaine was talking about when we even took field trips, we did task force meetings, one was here at the beaches, and the one here at the beaches was remarkable by how few complaints we heard. And I think that's the same thing we heard when the mayors and the city managers were before us at city council. And the neighborhoods committee, as we started calling ourselves, started thinking about that because what was different about the representation at the neighborhood level in the beaches in Baldwin versus when we were in Riverside, Avondale, or downtown. What we kept hearing over and over again was people in those non-beaches and Baldwin areas felt a disconnect with consolidated government. When consolidated government, many of them felt it was a betrayal of their ability to connect with, influence, and shape legislative priorities. They felt that particularly some of the older neighborhoods and poorer neighborhoods that consolidated government gave government an excuse to skip them when they were handing out resources, and that there wasn't an accurate and efficient way for them to get back in touch and communicate with the legislators. And as a sidebar, I've also had conversations with city council members who feel like they are now functioning as the 630 city line, that they are spending an enormous amount of their time trying to help connect a citizen with, okay, how do I get that empty houses, broken windows boarded up? How do I, which is certainly part of their job, but there's, again, this feeling that city services and responsiveness over time, because of consolidated government, may have left big portions of the city behind. So our view was to think about reconnecting neighborhoods and empowering them. The current system of neighborhood representation is the CPAC's systems. You all know about CPAC's, the Citizen Planning Advisory. So what the city, that Duval is divided up into 6 giant planning districts, and then there's a CPAC that represents each one of those big planning districts. And there didn't seem to be an enormous amount of, how should I say this? When, for instance, the Jacks 2025 people came and presented testimony to us, they did not say, empower the CPACs. They're the ones that can get things done. There was a lot of talk about there isn't anything that functions very well when it comes to us getting the resources we need or influencing legislation as neighborhoods. And that there were artificial boundaries drawn around planning districts and CPACs that don't make sense with the boundaries that we define ourselves as neighborhoods. So we started fresh, and we looked at models all around the country. And the one that seemed to make the most sense, both geographically And content-wise was a model that LA County uses, which is another huge county with a diverse population. And they've established neighborhood councils that are more or less organically formed, create their own bylaws, and if they want to participate and connect with city government, they have to be certified as having fair representation. And then there's built-in structure for when and how they connect with city government. So our recommendations, our first set of recommendations, borrow heavily from this neighborhood council model. And it calls for, actually, we start with a charter recommendation, that the city charter go back and reflect on and empower neighborhoods as the basic unit of governance and the way citizens usually connect with and evaluate government. And so if city government, if the charter reflects that importance of neighborhoods and then recognizes neighborhood councils, then we also have ordinance recommendations to go back and help support these neighborhood councils and really, I think, in some ways radically reshape the way local neighborhoods work together to influence policy. We also have, part of our work was to look at like on the other side, the CIP, the Capital Improvement Project Plan. And that's doling out the big resources for public works and so forth. We ask that a representative of the neighborhood council start sitting on and scoring those projects. We also recommend that the neighborhood councils submit their list of priorities for CIP projects to the scoring committee so that there's actually input coming up from neighborhoods to city government about what the priority should be. So we did spend an inordinate amount of time on neighborhood councils, and I can tell you now we're also getting an inordinate amount of pushback. There's people that are unhappy with us changing or even recommending rethinking the power structure that exists now. But I feel strongly that what we're doing is for the best interest of the neighborhood councils, the neighborhood groups, the homeowners associations, the preservation associations, the beaches watch associations that have already done yeoman's work in organizing the local communities. One of the other major parts of our work was the St. Johns River, which was hard because we'd be delving into tiny little neighborhood issues and then we say, okay, and then how does that affect the St. Johns River? And so it actually got pushed to the end of our deliberations, but we brought in a fabulous group of folks who are experts on the St. Johns River. And I'll just, one of our biggest recommendations is that the whole city have a zoning overlay for the riverfront. And that it's a 500 zoning overlay that would require access, transportation, environmental protection, a whole list of things be taken into consideration in this special overlay, zoning overlay. So those are the neighborhood empowerment, the CIP, and the St. Johns River, three of the most important recommendations I think we focused on.
What does 500 zoning overlay mean?
We have a recommendation that ordinance be changed that there's an all county, in other words, for all of Duval, there are special overlay districts right now, zoning overlays right now, for instance, downtown development. But we are saying that all development in the county needs to take into consideration the importance of the river. So there be a zoning overlay when you are developing properties within 500 feet of the river.
Or 500 feet.
Yeah, sorry.
Okay, so we've listened to what's going on in government and the processes in government and then citizen input into government. And I had a small task of actually looking at the design and structure of government. So my committee is a nice small name, governance and mission. We looked at governance and we looked at mission. The issues that we looked at was the form of government. And in that area, we looked at city council, the mayor, whether the city should have a city manager, a CAO, and a CFO, chief administrative officer, chief financial officer, and then general counsel, the role of the general counsel within the city, which is a part of central services within the city. The general counsel office is for the whole city, so that office is the lawyer of the city. We also looked at independent agencies, police and fire pension board, not the fund, the board, interlocal agreements. Yeah, that was mine. You guys are all interested in that. Then also the city charter, and probably the most unique and important part of what we looked at was this thing that we ended up coming out with as a strategic planning commission and mission integration. So I'm going to end on that. So I'll go back up to forms of government and structure. City council, we think it's, we looked at the number of council members as well as the at-large versus the districts. We recommend no change to that. Whenever we looked at this stuff, we really focused on the structure versus the people. So whenever we were thinking about, okay, this is an issue right now in government. Is it a people issue, is it a personality issue, or is it a structural issue? If it was the former, we did not touch it because that's up to the voters to fix the people issue. If it's a structural issue, then we try to adjust it in a way to minimize the people issue in the future. What we did recommend, and this was actually contentious at the last meeting, things have been flying through the committee as a whole. We all broke into subcommittees, and we bring our recommendations back now to the committee as a whole. And as the committee as a whole, for the most part, things are passing unanimously, until last week. And our committee. And I'm pretty sure tomorrow won't go that well either. So these are things that a lot of people have strong opinions on, and why they're there also matters. So with city council, one of the things that we looked at was term limits, and we know that it got passed by referendum, and it was because nationally there was this motto that 8 is enough. It's not based on any empirical data. It's not saying that after 8 years we found that people tend to go off track. So as a committee, we looked at city council, and we recommended that the term limits get shifted from 2 terms to 3 terms, and that got passed as long as it's by referendum. So we're recommending that we go back through referendum to shift it from 2 terms to 3 terms, 3 terms for the term limits. We also tacked on from that, this was Tony Hill, the senator. He wanted 3 and done. So in one's lifetime, they cannot serve more than 3 terms on city council. 3 terms and you're done. And that passed as well. We looked at similar things for the mayor. We had recommendations to move the mayor's term from a 2-term maximum to a 3-term maximum. Voted down. It got voted down, so there's no change for the term limits. And because that got voted down, we don't have to worry about anything going with referenda. City manager, CAO, CFO is something that my committee spent a long time on. We really hashed that out, especially when we listened to the city managers from the beaches. We're like, well, we need strong management in the city of Jacksonville. It's a big, big city. I should give you a little background here. I'm a professor of public administration, so this is really cool for me. This was kind of fun. I get to look at the structure of government, considering I studied it all the time. And I'm a strong advocate of a city manager. However, with the size of the city of Jacksonville, that's not as amenable as it is at the beaches city. So what we did end up doing is we're making a recommendation for a charter. Most of our recommendations are all for charter amendments, nothing big. So we're making the recommendation that the mayor must have a CAO and a CFO. The CAO, all the department heads would report to the CAO, the CFO would report to the CAO, and the CAO reports to the mayor. The mayor gets to choose the CAO and the CFO. It doesn't have to go in front of council for approval. However, in the charter on this recommendation, we also have job descriptions in there. I was pushing for that they had to have a master's degree, and it's a bachelor's.
From UNN.
Okay, from UNN. But no, that didn't work. So it's a bachelor's any accredited university. I didn't have one wrong, can I? With experience from both the CAO and the CFO and the CAO in public management. So it just can't be private sector management experience, it has to be public sector management experience, because as I repeated over and over again in the committee, often against a wall sometimes, there is a difference. Then so it's the city manager, and so no city manager, CAO, CFO, general counsel. We spent a lot of time on the general counsel. I know more about the general counsel's office than I think I needed to know. We had former general counsel people. The subcommittee that I was on was chaired by Peter Rummel. It was Peter Rummel, Michael Munns, Jim Reineman. Wow, I just want to have a bottle of wine. He's just like this knowledge base. Chuck Arnold, Steve. I mean, there was just a lot of very knowledgeable people there, especially when it came to the city council. Steve wrote the.
A lot of men.
They were all men, Cynthia also. But yeah, it's usually you just need a bunch of guys. Steve wrote and did write the language for the charter change for the general counsel's office. How it currently works is the general counsel's office is seated underneath the mayor, and it's the general counsel department of general counsel or something like that. We are recommending that it be moved out from underneath the mayor into its own structure, so this way it mimics the federal government's balance of powers, where you have the judiciary, the executive, and the judiciary, executive, and legislative. So we're putting that out there, so this way the general counsel doesn't feel beholden to the mayor for his or her position. That said, one of the things that the city council had some snafus with.
Heartburn, let's call it.
Okay, well, we can go heartburn. Has been their dissatisfaction with the general counsel's office in some instances. However, how it currently stands with the charter, the only person who can remove the general counsel is the mayor. So we are recommending that the mayor can still remove the general counsel for misfeasance, malfeasance, and criminal wrongdoing. I don't know the difference between misfeasance and malfeasance. I wasn't the lawyer in the room. But the city council can also remove ask for removal of the general counsel with approval of the mayor, but it has to be, we're recommending 15 votes. And the reason why we looked at that was if a general counsel cannot get, if the general counsel would see 15 members of the city council are going to vote him or her out, the person would most likely resign. So that is, and there's about 4 pages of recommendations for general counsel, so that's the highlights. Independent agencies. We looked at the independent agencies, the structure of them again, not the personalities within these agencies, and in this instance, Cynthia Austin was very helpful because she was on the board of the JEA and the JTA. Lots of A's. And we didn't recommend any of the changes except for one that we'll be discussing soon for the whole committee, and that is when new board members get appointed to the independent agencies, the boards of the independent agencies, they get a separate training. They get the training within the agencies to learn the business of whatever the agency does, but a separate training to understand the role of being a board member. Currently, the president of the agency, so the president of JEA, JPA, it is his or her role to train the board members. So in effect, you're having the employee train the boss on how to do their job. Because remember, the role of the board is to oversee the CEO or the president. And we're trying to correct this so the lines of accountability are a little bit clearer. And that's one that we will be recommending. Police and Fire Pension Board. Well, you've read about this in the paper a lot, and we figured we're going to see what happens out of that, and it still hasn't finished, so we haven't made any recommendations, but there was discussion that we might want to look at the makeup of the board, make some recommendations on that. That might get kicked back to committee, but we're running out of time. Interlocal agreements, the moment you have all been waiting for. We're all happy out here at the beaches. We're happy with our services because most of our services come from our beach cities, Atlantic Beach, Neptune Beach, and Jax Beach, and we are very happy with that. The issues at the beaches tend to be not the services that we get, but the services we are supposed to be getting from the city of Jacksonville. And so here we had, you can look at it as, you can open up all the interlocal agreements, which everybody said that they did not want to do. Or we can try and figure out a way to have some institutional knowledge across administrations within the city of Jacksonville. And so we opted for the latter. And so we are making an ordinance recommendation that when a new administration comes in, key employees, all the ones that provide the services that they're supposed to be providing, are trained on what their roles and responsibilities are within each of the cities. That is the only recommendation that we have on the interlocal agreement. Sorry, I couldn't make that more fun and exciting for you. But we're happy out here. City charter, we have a lot of charter changes, but one of them that we're recommending is 13 votes to waive any ordinance code. So this way it's not as easy to get around things in the charter. And, wow, I'm going to whip out strategic planning really quick. Under Sheriff Senefit sat on the side of me every week for this committee meeting, and on there, on Jacksonville's badge, it says the bold new city of the South. And I'd look at there every morning, and I'd look, okay, bold new city of the South, I'm kind of chuckling with myself. And as we kept going through all these issues, structure, people issues, and all of that, I'm thinking, you know, Jacksonville is not bold, and Jacksonville is not new. What can we do again to make Jacksonville the bold new city of the South that it was in 1968 when it consolidated, because that was something that was new then. And we decided that one way to do that is to try and figure out how we can get all of the different entities in the city of Jacksonville at least moving in the same direction. Because right now you can have independent agencies doing whatever the independent agencies want to do because they are separate for a reason. We don't want politics influencing them. We don't want the city of Jacksonville dipping in JEA to balance its budget. There's a reason why it's independent. Then you have the city of Jacksonville, which it can move in the same direction with the proper leadership. And then you have all your constitutional officers. So how do you get them all on the same page to be able to maximize your resources and leverage all the things that Jacksonville has going for it? And this is where we came up with the strategic plan. And the key, all of the key players in the public sector, we also included a lot of businesses here, but Jim Ryan said we might want to rethink that. So we have a list of 31 that's still being negotiated in full committee, so tune in tomorrow online. There's a link on the City of Jacksonville website on the Under City Council. You'll see us chatting all this up.
Thrilling.
Yeah, exciting. And we're arguing that the city needs a 10-year strategic plan. 10 years will span administrations, but both the mayor administration and the city council. And that 10-year plan needs to take into account the health of the city, the business communities, the neighborhoods, the internal structures. And the idea of the plan is just like any other strategic plan, is to have a very big vision of where the city wants to go in the future and how it's going to get there. Not micromanage it, but have some kind of a roadmap. Once that's there, the players who are on the strategic planning commission then go back to their agencies and work on the implementation of it. Another part is that we're asking for the city to spend some money on creating a strategic planning, like not a department, but staff for the strategic planning commission, because the implementation is really key. We all hear about strategic plans and, oh, everybody's got a strategic plan, it just sits there on the shelf and nobody ever does anything. That's not the strategic plan's fault, that is the implementation problem, and so we're making strong recommendations to make sure that the plan is implemented correctly, and the individuals that we are asking to be on the strategic planning commission, or that we're recommending that they ask to be on the strategic planning commission, are big names in the city, and it really gives it a lot of validity and weight as to where the city needs to go in the future. With that, I'm going to, you go ahead.
I signed up for your class anyway.
Yeah.
Well, I didn't know that I was going to unleash the hounds back in July, but I sure as heck did. 30 people who have shown great dedication, motivation, contributed an incredible amount of time and energy to an effort that was sorely needed because 40 years had passed with consolidation, and we had never scored ourselves or looked at what worked and didn't work and what could be fixed or made better. And I just, we also have a fourth member, by the way, attending tonight. Tom Taylor was on the task force. Tom, wave at everybody. And I just want we were blessed to have 4 people from the beach representing us well. I'd just like to, again, recognize them and thank them for their contribution with a round of applause. I've been so honored to represent the beaches. The beach is a special place for me, having grown up here and being part of it for so long. But even more honored to follow in the footsteps of Elaine Brown and be the council president this year. It's a humbling experience, and I have enjoyed it, representing the whole community so very much. I think what you've heard here is exactly what I was hoping for, that we would see recommendations coming forth that would generate legislative action, charter revision, and change, and a whole new direction. And somebody challenged me because they looked at me as a beach guy that's anti-consolidation early on in the process, and they said, "You just want to deconsolidate." And I said, "No, I want to reconsolidate." Because every company, every business, every sports team has to sometimes stop and look inward and say, you know, we need to evaluate ourselves. We need to evaluate our performance, and that's what this process was. And who better to do it than people like these 3 young ladies here, Tom, and all the other folks that represented the diversity of our community to do that kind of thing for our community. And so again, I am so very appreciative. I understand that by the end of the month, your work will be done, hopefully. There's no more contentious meetings, etc. And think about that. They have met, not only met every Thursday, month after month after month, but then gone, as Rena alluded to, went out on fact-finding missions and the like. And Lori Boyer, I'll tell you what, the smartest person in the world is to find somebody smarter than they are and put them in charge of something or to do something, and she has been an absolute godsend. You don't know how valued she is on that council, and what a great person, human being and resource and asset that she is, and her willingness to chair this and devote a lot of time meant so much to the process and to the success of the thing. And so Lori and I, at the end of the project, we're going to sit down and we're going to map out a strategy how to introduce and to go forward, because the worst thing we could do with all the work that they put in is to neglect or ignore that by not doing anything. So I can pledge to you all that this kid, even after he leaves the office, the presidency, is going to continue to stay focused to push that and to engage people to get it done. You know, I think you've heard some of the recommendations, and I'll just touch on a couple of them. We have some significant problems. We have significant neighborhood problems. One of my concerns, great concerns in the community as a whole, is neighborhood decline. Because while you may think it's a regional issue or a local issue for that neighborhood, I would submit to you it's a community issue. It's a serious community issue. We've got areas of this town that the neighborhoods, and I've toured, for instance, like Durkeeville, I've toured them with people, and it's sad to see where it's going. And the impact is that those people that are the bad people in those communities, and that those numbers are growing, they're not impeded by the river. They're not impeded by anything, any physical barrier from spreading out into the rest of the community, and that's why I say it's a community problem. Elaine's reference to the health situation that we have with health service and the cost of it and some optional plans, etc. Something else for you to think about is that UF Health has gotten the same dollar contribution from the city of Jacksonville, roughly the same for about the last 10 years. Now, those of you that have any experience know that costs have not remained constant, and we cannot afford to lose our county hospital, and especially UF Health, because when that goes, the next county, the next hospital that might take it over wouldn't necessarily provide that trauma center that is so renowned and so important to this community. So there are all kinds of things that they have discussed that are critical to the community that will have a connection above and beyond just a restructure or a look at a restructure and change in government. And so I'm glad that they went where they went as to the all-encompassing nature of their activity and their study. And really, and they will attest to it, the people that were on there. Lori, again, I had to yield the selection, the final selection in the committee. She and I went through a number of names. I think there were over 100 people that volunteered. And we sat down and we went through names, but I told her the final decision as to who to pick needs to rest with you. You're the chair, that's your job. So I gave some counsel and some opinion, but at the end she picked them and she did a masterful job because I think she got a great diverse group with a lot of knowledge, a lot of institutional knowledge, and then the incredible thing that she did, I think, was instead of starting right into the task, she educated. She started, the first phase was educating the people, and I'll tell you what, these people, Tom and these ladies here, know more, and all people on that body know more about consolidated government now, I believe, than anybody else in the city of Jacksonville. And they will continue to be a great resource, I think, and be engaged in the process. So with that, we'll just open it up for questions, right? And again, I thank you all so very much. I'll be ready now.
My one concern that I've had over the years is the fact that at the beaches, each one of the cities are responsible for the health, the health of their employees. And when you're a small unit, it's harder to get good health than when you're a big unit. So I've always kept asking, how can we consolidate the Neptune and Atlantic and Jack's Beach, that their employees to make a larger unit to give them better exposure. So when you were talking about the health and having this one place with employees, is it a possibility, or was it in your thinking, that we can have the employees from Neptune, Atlantic, and Jack's become part of that pool, and that way to give them a better opportunity?
Yeah, and you're exactly right. The bigger the pool, the better for everybody. That's why we'll be looking at independent authorities and the school board, et cetera, but this is going to take a task force of people that the president and Lori, they're going to be looking at how to form this task force. And I had the luxury of having Dr. Bill Mason on my committee. And quite frankly, this has worked in some areas. Actually, Blue Cross is getting into it. And it's very difficult to do for numerous reasons. People, I want my own doctor. And one of the things like police and fire, one of their biggest objections to it was, well, here, you're going to know everything about me. I just want to go to my own doctor, and that's all they take care of is my body. I don't want my employer to know anything about me. And they're as separate as you're going to your own doctor right now. They have the acts and everything else, keep everything within arm's length. So it's going to take putting this together with really good insurance and medical experts, and it's got a long way to go. I think that once you say the word free if I hire you to come to work for the city of Jacksonville, I say, we're going to take care of you and your family, and you get your own building of doctors over here that they can go to, and they're only going to be concentrating on you. Nobody else in the public is going to go to that office. That's going to be pretty good. A lot of people would say, wow, and they can go more at will, and the doctors know them, and so there's a lot of good. And then you guys are probably thinking, oh, yeah, but this, and this, and so I think that's going to be one of the toughies for everybody. But if you look at healthcare and the way it's going now, it may be one that would be taken very seriously right now. Be really, and Blue Cross will probably be at the table with this because they've done it, and a couple of other areas it's been done, but Dr. Mason said this is, it's tough, it's going to be a long road, and yes, other municipalities within Duval County would certainly be welcome.
And actually, I've got a committee that's working on that right now, believe it or not. One of the concerns is that UF Health is suffering financially because it doesn't have a paying customer base or patient base. It's so into the indigent care, et cetera, that people shy away from it. There's a plan that's been developed at the University of Florida covering Gainesville that is an exact replica of what has been discussed here that they're looking at. Because if we can help UF Health by the city being partnered with them on having health care provided, we can help ourselves too in terms of funding the hospital. And here's the pushback. The pushback is this: when you say UF Health Shands, everybody thinks, ooh, that's over there on 8th Street. Ooh, bad deal. Do yourself a favor sometime, do a little internet search and see how many locations UF Health has in the city of Jacksonville. You would say, who has the most, and you probably respond Baptist. UF Health does. And so we've got an opportunity there, and we would want to include everybody.
Georgette, the thing you were talking about with institutional knowledge, when there's a change in administration, maybe your term of administration means more than just changing mayors. Because from personal experience, we've seen that with turnover in the lower ranks, not only the department director, but several steps below, when there's turnover there, they don't have any institutional knowledge, and so we found continuing problems with that also.
Right.
Yeah, we discussed that, and it's called the thickening of government. So it's the number of people who are there between the merit-based bureaucrats and the elected officials, so all the appointed people by the elected officials. And that has been growing. It's grown at the federal level, it grows at the local level as well. We tried to approach this as, again, a structure issue, but in a way that with a strong form, or the strong mayor form of government, we want to allow him or her to have enough leeway to implement the policies that, their platform that they ran on. We did not recommend reducing the number of appointed officials, but there are job descriptions, and we're hoping that by having for council to waive charter ordinances, to waive the things that are in the charter, by putting that up to 13, they'll actually have to address what the recommendations are in the charter and in the ordinances when approving these positions. Because right now they're just kind of getting approved, even though they're not always supposed to. Just also as well with the CAO, one of the things that we recommended is while we are mandating that position be there, a new mayor doesn't have to get rid of that position. So we don't have an end time on that. So we're hoping that, and this happened a couple times, this happened with Lex Hester, and this happened with Lee Samusa as well, crossed administrations. So a new mayor, a smart person coming in will know that maybe that first day you have bigger things to go on, you let the managing of these departments keep going with that person, then over time, put your person in there. But at least learn how the game is getting played.
But that's not the way it's happening.
Not currently, no.
We lost one very good department head and he got rehired.
I want to hear about the police department board.
Later,
I know, okay, I'll let that go, but we can talk about it after.
Well, we discussed it. We said that's there. It was part of our charge. And there's this whole task force out there spending a lot of time and resources on it, so we'll let them deal with it. And that was our recommendation.
Good.
Any other questions?
I have one. It's more of a comment. There are a lot of plans out there right now. We have JAX 2025, we have the DIA, we have the CRA. There are a lot of disparate groups coming up with plans. And in Jacksonville, historically, there's a lot of plans. And they're put on the shelf, just like you said about a strategic plan. So how do we make sure, I know you said you're going to sit down, but these plans, we had a 10-year plan for homelessness that never got implemented at all. We spent at least a year on that plan years ago. So it's just frustrating in Jacksonville that people spend so much time and energy, smart people, and they put together these amazing plans, and yet they never get implemented. I'm just questioning.
I think you're absolutely right. I think now to the specifics of this, there are things that I can control and the things that I can't control. I have a better chance of controlling the outcome of this and taking the plan or the suggestions and actually implementing, because Georgette said it exactly right when she said many times the problem is not anything other than the implementation, and it doesn't get done, and that's really what you're talking about. I think that speaks to the issue of the structure of our government as to a strong mayor form of government, because that's really where that rests, I believe. The council can only do so much, and we probably overstepped our bounds in the last year or so a number of times. And you're 100% right, though, about we got plans on top of plans and nothing gets done. I can't speak to all of that, but I'm doggone sure you can stay after me, as I know you do well, making sure that this gets done. But you're right, and I think that also. I've noticed that too, Cindy, that the other problem we got in the strategic group, Matt Schellenberg introduced legislation that got passed but been ignored about the idea of having a body that would be made up of the mayor, the president of the council, the head of each of the independent authorities, I don't remember who else, and they would meet regularly to try and bring some consensus and direction as a community. And thus far, that was another plan that we passed, and nothing's happened to it, but it got lost in the administration. But you're right, we got to stop planning, we got to start doing,
Well, and one of the things I would say, Cindy, is that both the president and Councilwoman Boyer said, don't come back and tell us you have ideas, give us ordinance language, give us charter language, give us, so most of these recommendations come with incredibly specific, strike here, insert here, sort of, that I think the decision point is either do it or not.
Right.
There's not okay, how do we execute? Hopefully we'll see that some of this will be taken up by City Council and...
I don't have any aversion, and I think that I like the process. The only problem is doing it all at once. But I have no aversion in introducing all of it and then debate it in council. What part of it the council can act on. I think that's a healthy process. Elaine knows how it works, and especially knows how it works. It goes to committee and it gets debated strongly, and that's a healthy way to do it, I believe. So that's probably what we're going to see go.
Jim Reineman, one of the things, he was involved with the original consolidation and crafting it in the first place, and he strongly recommends, and we were always working on language, is that we write up the charter amendments. We write that up, so this way when the council gets it, it's not like, well, now how are we going to deal with this, what was their intent? So we have charter language, then we have background information on each one of the recommendations in that charter language. So Jim's really been at the forefront to make sure if we want to get this through, we just can't give them a list of recommendations. We have to give them the language and make it easy as possible for them to just move it along.
So what are the next steps then in this process?
They will finish the end of the month. Lori and I get together with all their recommendations. They get a bunch of attaboys and hugs, and then we will start some kind of process as to how we introduce that. And probably you don't want to, like I said a minute ago, you may want to prioritize and introduce what you deem to be the most important initially, because you're not just going to flood the council with all their recommendations at one time. That would be imprudent. But we will come up with a structure, and then we'll make that announcement as to it.
And where are the other council members as far as on board with this or not at all, or have they been apprised or kept?
No, and I mean, they haven't been really, they've had the opportunity to watch and to study, etc. But my sense is that they, like myself, have just been waiting for the point when the recommendations come forward, and I think that's most of their positions. I don't think they've been much engaged. There are a few other things to keep them busy down there, so.
I was going to say too that I like the fact that it's going to them already made. I don't know that I would introduce them all at once and say go for it, because that could cause chaos, number one. But I think that there's some pretty seasoned people on that council that have had some frustrations that this process has really addressed. And that's a good thing too. There are some things that they've been there long enough to see some 8 years, as of next year, that they're going to be going, yeah, absolutely. And others that I think they'll be able to say, we're great idea, or we should, pursue that further. So I don't know how the president and Lori are gonna, kind of put this out, dole it out, or whatever they're gonna do. But I'm really pleased with the expertise we've got on the council, with a lot of those council members, and led by, Gulliford. If he's going to remain maybe with that as it makes its way through, then that will be great too. And I'm pleased with a whole bunch of those people. They've got some good seasoned people on there that will take it.
Well, and it's great to be in front of Beaches Watch, because I'm sure that there's parts of this that intrigue you all that you might want to see come to fruition. So we might need to actually engage stakeholders in advocating for certain pieces of this. And so it's great to thank you for having us come and explain what we're trying to get done.
Can we do one more question and then we'll wrap up? Go ahead.
This is a governance question. Transformational change takes a long time, not just 1 year, 4 years, or 8 years. Did you address it all? And I don't know, the council president, is that limited to 1 term? Or 1 year, or did you talk about that?
It was on our list of things to discuss, and we looked at it, we discussed it, and we figured 1 year is fine, because if they want them to be 2 years, they can vote them in again. Conversely, if you moved it to a 2-year term, and somebody was an inadequate council president, then you're stuck for another year.
But they could have up to 2? Or
You
just
could be council president for 4 years.
Okay.
In fact, Warren Jones was the only one I know of who repeated. He was, and I think frankly, having had the experience, he must have had a mind meltdown or something to agree to that. But I can tell you folks, I don't think after the experience, there are many people that want to do it a second time, right after the first time. You might want to take a breather, and maybe you come back a year or 2 or 3 years later or whatever, but it's pretty time demanding and intense sometimes. We had a very intense gas tax extension meeting this afternoon that I had to rein the Indians in a few times. So, it's challenging, as Elaine well knows. Yes, Elaine well knows. You got 18 fellow council members that you're trying to keep all of their, what would you call it, their directions, their desires, their biases, and what have you, and keep them together and heading in hopefully the same direction. June 30th. I'm out June, 4 more meetings. That's right, who knows that? Well, thank you all. I appreciate the answers.
And I want to thank you, I think all of us want to thank you, because this, I think, was very important. I mean, it's very timely. And I think this has been huge. And we really hope to see some good things come out of this. And we really appreciate you initiating it. And everyone who served. Thank you so much.